welcome back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics. And today, Bridget and I have on an amazing woman, Karen Duffy. You guys might remember her from the 90s MTV VJ, and she's written a New York Times bestselling book, Model Patient. But she has a new book out now called Wise Up, Irreverent Enlightenment from a Mother Who's Been Through It. And we are so excited to talk to her today about the book and what she's doing in her midlife and beyond. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much. It is such a grace to be here because truly you are in my ear holes and reside in my heart every week. I love this podcast.
Thank you so much for that. It's so nice to hear that. And we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And I have to say, I read your book, Wise Up, and I don't know what I thought going into it, what I would learn, because it's letters written to your son, Jack, but I learned so much more than I expected to. Thank you for sharing so much knowledge. I learned more about Greek philosophy than I ever learned in school. So what prompted you to write this book?
Well, thank you for your kind words. I've been living with a chronic illness and chronic pain for half my life. And when I realized that this pain would never stop, I didn't want it to make me mean. And I'm a really happy-go-lucky, fly by the seat of your pants type of girl. And I realized that pain is inevitable. We will all feel pain, but suffering can be optional. And I found the work of the school of philosophy called the Stoics. And the main thesis of Wise Up is, if you make beautiful choices, you will make a beautiful life. So I wrote this book. It was really, over the years, it was a collection of essays, and I was just filling it with all these random facts and astounding stories. And I just wanted the reader to feel loved. So I asked my son, Jack, who's a teenager, I said, I thought if there's a Stoic tradition where you write books in letters. And I said, can I address these chapters as letters to you? And he said, yes, but please don't use my nickname. Use my real name because I'm proud of you. So my goal was to have this incandescent, radiant love just radiate off the page.
Well, it definitely did that, right, Bridget?
Oh, yeah. No, I was just curious if you could just share a little bit about sarcoidosis. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yes. With our listeners, and a little bit just about what you've been through. And you talk about chronic pain versus your acute pain, chronic pain, and then, you know, how this all came about. And your letters are just, you know, your essays to your son are so touching.
Well, thank you. Sarcoidosis is a inflammatory disease of unknown origin. It affects about 250,000 Americans. And because of the sarcoidosis, it creates granulomas. So it's like a tumor, but they're like crystallized. So I have a large one in my brainstem. My doctor's Italian. He says, it's the size of a mostaccioli, which is like a rigatoni. But your skull is a contained area. So as this lesion grew, it crushed all the nerves. And so nerves don't often rewire. So I realized that I was going to have to mourn for my old life and figure out a whole new life. And I've been trying to use my voice as an advocate because I live with an invisible illness, and pain is invisible. And often when you see someone who identifies as chronically ill, they often look great. And it is really, that's an upside, but it is a real challenge. It's like waking up in the morning and then picking up a refrigerator and then having to carry it all day. And then when you're in bed, it's on top of you. So it never stops. So I had to find a way to peacefully cohabitate with this illness. So often with chronic illness, we use these warlike metaphors, like, you know, you're going to beat this, we're going to blast it, we're going to fight it with all you have. And I think, I'm a lover, not a fighter. And I just didn't want a lot of warlike metaphors in my head. So in a way, Wise Up is a love letter to life. And it's for where I am, no matter where I am. I am grateful for every day.
That's incredible. You know, I've had two people in my life who actually have sarcoidosis, which is
Oh,
very unusual. It actually, I used to teach Pilates, and one of my students, they thought she had lung cancer, and it ended up the lesions in her lungs were sarcoidosis. And another friend, it affected his heart. And with both of them, it took forever to get diagnosed. There was a million other things. Can you talk about that journey to diagnosis? Because you were living, you were a MTV VJ, you were in the public eye, and then it just sidelined you. Can you talk about that journey?
well, it truly, this had been growing for years and years, but at the point where it got so big that it destroyed the nerves, it felt like I was just being struck by lightning. And I was working for MTV. I was making films. I was also the Charlie girl for Revlon. And it did take about 4 years to get a full diagnosis of exclusion, which means it doesn't present as other ways. So the way I look at it is everybody has something. And I know what mine is. And it has been a challenge to create a whole new life. I mean, I'm no longer insurable on film. So I've had to switch to producing. But all of these choices have been, rooted in how I can be useful. I mean, every day we have a choice. We can be useful or useless. So I try to be useful. And again, in many small ways, there are times when truly I can't leave the house for many days because true wind can be so painful. I mean, it's like getting a root canal. That's what it feels like. So I focus on what I can do rather than lamenting what I cannot.
You know, another thing that, and I read your other book, Backbone. Another thing that you mentioned that is so important too for women of our age, or really anybody, is how if you don't get diagnosed or if you don't find the right doctor, how to move on to another doctor. And I know that it took you, how many did you go through to really figure out? You said 4 years, but how much did you go through?
Well, multiple doctors, different hospitals, and I just created a team. And I found a woman who is a psychologist, and she studies the psychology of illness in women. Again, I didn't want to get mean. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself. I feel so grateful for every day. And so it was an obstacle. And it's often, Marcus Aurelius said, the obstacle is the way. Often what is impeding us can inspire us to find a new way. So I found this great doctor, and I had her, I said, could you just be like the team captain? And then this way, the neurologist, the pulmonologist, the pain specialists, they can all kind of talk, what medicines I'm on. And that was incredible. I mean, she didn't have to do it for long, but going to her in a way helped me. I didn't want to fall into a hole and not be able to get out. And she gave me some tools, and I'm trying to share that and talking to the world through books.
Well, in the book, you're very clear that you talk about Stoic philosophy, Greek philosophy a lot. And one of the tenets is that we can't control what happens. We can only control how we respond. And that's really what you seem to be saying. You know, like I said before, you write this book in kind of love letters to your son, to like stages of life. And each one kind of has not new nickname because you weren't using his nicknames, but different title to it. And the first part of it really talks about him getting a life philosophy. Why do you think it's so important for him to have a life philosophy?
You know, in our family, breakfast is the time when we're all together. My son's involved in sports, my husband works. So breakfast is the time I make a hot meal, we're all together. And if he doesn't want to talk, he's a teenager, I have philosophy books and the sports pages. And I really found that the idea of having a life philosophy, and especially Stoic philosophy, it has been a scaffolding that has held me up. And there's a spiritual equation that said life is about 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond. And I wanted my son to be awake to these ideas. And it's, you know, books are not just lifeless lumps of paper, they are radiant, entombed minds. And so it's a way to kind of connect. So I love when Jack and I are talking, and sometimes he'll be like, well, you know, Mom, as Aristotle said, worry is misuse of the imagination. So please don't worry about that. I mean, that just ignited Greek fire in my heart.
That it is so amazing. And it's that whole reaction. I'm 54 years old. I'm like, how did it take me that long to realize that? Because I think I'm just now realizing that it is my response and my reaction to how things happen. If something happens or somebody says something, what they say is what they've said and the way you react. And I'm like, why could I not? I'd heard it, but I never understood it until I got to around this age, to just let those things go. So it's so wonderful to read all of these different, I don't know, philosophy, you know, things that you included. It's amazing.
That's absolutely true. I love how Marcus Aurelius said, like, the best way to deal with an adversary is to just not be like them. And that is so, like, that's what I love about Stoic wisdom. It is so easy and practical. It was written 2000 years ago, but it reads as if it's still wet. And it has been such a gift. And again, just having this simple thesis of, if you make beautiful choices, you will make a beautiful life, which is a Stoic belief, is just, that just put gas in my tank every day.
I think a lot of our listeners are at that stage of life where they think things are happening to them. Their children are growing up and leaving the house. They're no longer, you know, the youngest person in the room. They don't feel seen and heard. And it seems like that Stoic philosophy really, if they stop and kind of allow it to enter their heart, can really help them. And it seems like it's really helped you. Do you find that as you get older, it seems to resonate even more?
Absolutely. You know, your mother is your first home. And as my son is an adolescent, you know, one of the things we spoke about, I was like, you know, Jack, mothers are so incredible that nature had to make a chemical to break our bond. And that is a combination of progesterone, estrogen in women and females, and men, it's testosterone. And so there will be a time where me biting into a piece of toast will be repellent to you. And he's like, you know, Mom, I don't think that's really going to happen. We seem to have a really great relationship. And then one day we were having dinner and he was like, oh, it happened. But it wasn't a bite of toast. It was you chomping into that cob of corn like Seabiscuit. So, you know, it's interesting because life doesn't give you a manual, but it does give you a mom. And that has been our identity. And having a son who's now heading off to college soon, in a way, they need us in a different way. And what I love, what your message is show up for yourself and make sure you're on your own dance card. Those are important lessons that I think we need in midlife. I also love how, again, you know, how important it is. And then I hear on your show all the time is the importance of female friendships.
And you do have a set of friends that you've had since middle school. Can you talk about that and how important?
Yes, one
it
lives
is?
right upstairs.
Oh.
And we are a core group. And yes, there's 4 of us, and we all live in the same neighborhood in New York City. And it's really interesting. The psychiatrist I went to, psychologist, to deal with chronic illness, she said, your girlfriends are going to show up. And she said, we love men, but they're just a little bit behind than us. And so she said, you would sleep on your friend's floor and make her an English muffin if she needed it. So be awake to asking, because this is a reciprocal relationship. And so having my home team has just, it's been such a gift. As Yates said, the glory is I've had such friends. And I love that Lord Byron said, always laugh when you can. It's good medicine. And my friends keep me laughing. And, they are, and it's good friends or make you a better person. So I'm so grateful.
Absolutely true. And also you mentioned like social circle, like I can't exactly remember what it was, but about being happier with more people are happier with, and it doesn't have to be a huge social circle, but that heavy social circle of friends is so important too. And I can't remember do you remember who said that or what I'm referring? I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I think like I'm a little more extroverted, and it turns out that my 3 best friends are shy, more introverted. And it's not like we're in each other's pockets every day, but I know that they're there. And if I need them, they're there. Like one of the things that in this discovery, in writing this book, was the discovery of the ancient Greeks had many types of love. Like we have, we just think romantic love, this idea of a soulmate, but they believed that actually erotic romantic love was destabilizing. But they felt that like philia, which was the brotherly love, or agape, the love for all mankind, or philatulia, which is the self-love, pragma, which is the deep love and companionship, or ludos is the jokey love. I love that they have expanded this taxonomy of ways to love, where in popular culture, we seem to be helpless, and that like love is kind of picked by wearing a Hogwarts sorting hat. So I love that there is, if we can expand our vocabulary and our definitions for love.
And that's so true, especially, as we get older, sometimes the friendships or relationships or marriages that we have had no longer serve us. And we've spoken to experts that separating from friends, there's a grief process there too, because they're not always connected the way you were when you were younger. But the fact that you've been able to go through since middle school and journey together, although everybody's journey is different, it's so important to have that person that you can call and say, oh my gosh, I'm really going through this. I'm having a hard time, or guess what just happened, and feel that joy. So it's so important.
It's true. And what's so beautiful is that friendship is purely voluntary. We're showing up on a volunteer basis. It is not, there's not a social contract like a domestic partnership or a marriage. So I've been friends with Lori, Lynn, and Greg since 7th grade. Lori lives upstairs, and sometimes I'll say, oh, John, I miss Lori. And he's like, how is that possible? You guys went to junior high, high school, you went to college together, you lived together till you got married, and then we all live in the same apartment building. It's a big apartment building, but I can see her terrace from out my window. But it's important to, yes, value those friendships. But I was mistaken when I thought that loyalty was a virtue. And yes, there is a grieving process, because sometimes, a friend can be a unhealthy, toxic presence in your life. And we have to love ourselves enough to create boundaries. And so, yes, I talk about having to weed my social garden. And that took me a long time till mid-age to understand that that was not me being weak. It was actually me being strong for myself and not tolerating somebody who was showing repellent behavior.
That is absolutely true. And I think it took me that long too, because like you said, I would feel like I was being disloyal or unloyal to that person. And I would put it all on me that I am being, I'm so wrong for doing this. But talking about, wait a minute, I don't have to, I don't have to go through this. I don't have to be put upon, or just, I don't even know the insult. And I think you had said something about how you just kind of changed to friend to acquaintance, you know,
Exactly.
you know, slowly. And that is really to hear other women say that and just kind of give you the okay, you know, not really, not that you personally need an okay, but I think when you just read that someone else is like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. It's so helpful to women.
Truly, we have to be as Marcus Aurelius says, we have to be a friend to ourselves. And if we are friendly to ourselves, if we show compassion and generosity and kindness to ourselves, then we can share it with others. And again, I think we've been socialized to believe that loyalty is a highest virtue, when truly I think the most noble of all virtues and the parent to all virtues is gratitude and being grateful for your life and for your circumstances. And that will kind of drive you to your purpose.
You also, kind of along those lines, you also talk in the book, which I was not from. Obviously, I know what paranoia is, but I was not familiar with pronoia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yes.
which is actually the world is conspiring for you as opposed to against you. And I loved that. That was like an underlying kind of asterisk star moment in the book, because you go on to talk about there's low levels of happiness and there's high levels of happiness. And for women in our demographic, like I said before, so many things are happening to us that we think they're happening against us instead of for us to lead us in a new direction. And I would love if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Well, absolutely. I think that, our, the idea that it's just a shift of thinking, like in discovering this idea of the opposite of paranoia is pronoia. I was like, okay, well then I'm going to try and look for that. And I think when you look for things in your life, you will find them. And having the idea of that, life isn't all about fanfare. It's not all surprise parties and weddings and birthdays and Christmases. It's really in the beautiful, small, everyday moments that we actually accumulate and create a beautiful life. I was at an event and I heard President Biden speak, and he spoke about purpose. And he said, in life, to find our purpose, we need something to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And I think if you look forward to opportunities or moments of grace, how can I be of service? I think that will enhance your life. And it's important to be awakened to the idea that we have control. Again, we can't control what happens, but we control how we respond.
That's so important. I just love that idea that the world is conspiring for you, because we're always so paranoid that things are happening that are like going to be bad to us. We never think of, oh, what is the world trying to say to lead me in a new direction? And that's happening so much in midlife and beyond. And if we could embrace that more, what a gift it would be for a lot of people. You also talk about small acts of kindness and how important it is for your son to learn about that. Can you talk a little about that?
Well, in our family, service was a part of our family commitment. It's interesting. Our family, we have a tradition where we pick a motto to live by, and we don't make a big deal. It's not ceremonial. One must pitch it out. And right now it's from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, write it on your heart that every day is the best day of the year. And he also said, nothing great in life has ever been accomplished without enthusiasm. So I try to show my son how I work as a mentor, and have inspired him. He's becoming a mentor because he enjoys it. I don't expect him to follow and do everything the way that my husband and I do. He's finding his own way. But, Muhammad Ali said, service is the rent we pay for living life on earth. And so I believe that acts of service are truly an act of, it reflects back on us. It is what we do for others is actually becomes a kindness to ourselves.
And it can be just any small thing, like you said, it doesn't have to be something grandiose. It can be, if you want to volunteer for something, but I think you mentioned like just giving somebody a water bottle that might be too hot, in the street, just anything to help. And it's amazing when you do this little act of kindness for somebody, their reaction to it. And then it's like, now all these things are better. You feel better, they feel better. And your energy for that day or however long, you're just a little bit better for doing it.
I believe that we're hardwired. This is a part of us. I think we are social animals. For my son's birthday, it was a really hot day, and we've got I can't drive anymore, so he takes a Fiat, and we went and got cases of Gatorade and just drove around to road workers and handed them out. And he was shy and he was like, oh, this is kind of crazy. But it's something that he talks about, not frequently, but he was like, he goes, I thought you were a crackpot. I thought it was a really cockamamie idea, but it's something that I learned that I thought it was, he said, I was embarrassed to start. But once you give that first one, the response, the first guy we gave it to him, he said, ooh, this is going to go down nice. And now anytime we take a drink, we say that. And so that, again, that's part of our, what's called a familect, the nicknames we call each other, the shorthand you have in your house, like the quotes that you use are all part of your familect, your family vocabulary. And we learned that one from a very hot day and taking an opportunity.
That's so cool. I love that.
It was really fun.
Now you have a son who's getting ready to leave for college. How are you dealing with that transition?
Well, it's I've been preparing for this for 18 years. When you look at life as an actuarian, you only have kids, really little kids for 4 years. And then you get 18 summers with them. And what I see, my son's in boarding school and he's an athlete. And while he's been away for 4 years already, he is on the windowsill, ready to go. And I couldn't be happier because that means I did my job right. I always said, if you just moved into our basement, that wouldn't, then I might have misread a few things. But the fact that you are so ready to go, it's interesting. One of my Seneca said that every new beginning comes at some other beginning's end. And so he's getting ready to graduate. And I saw him at a race this weekend. And I said, just very briefly, we saw each other and I said, there's a new word that I found, and it's called finifugal, and it means the fear of endings. And as you get ready to leave your school and leave your friends and leave this brotherhood, there is this idea that sometimes it can be painful and sad. And so people may be acting out in ways, and it is because they don't know how to handle feeling unsteady. I am a hospice chaplain. And when I was in chaplaincy school, one of the things I took away was they always said, be mindful of how you end things, because every ending is a little death. And this is in the Buddhist tradition. And I say goodbye on the phone as if my hair's on fire. I'm like, okay, goodbye. And like, literally, I am terrible. Every party, I do the Irish goodbye, throw the coat out the window and run out. Like, I don't say goodbye to, and I realized this is me being uncomfortable with saying goodbye. And I think being kind of awake to this idea, I can then tell my son, this is what it was like for me. This is why the Duffy family has a history of like hanging up mid-sentence. And just be aware that this is a time where big transitions, they're called liminal spaces. And these spaces are where big things happen. I mean, in our age and our demographic of women, we are in this amazing liminal space where essentially we are entering a whole new state of life. When a caterpillar is in a chrysalis, the caterpillar completely decomposes and then recomposes, creating these what are lyrically called imaginal cells. And so when the chrysalis cracks open and there's no longer a caterpillar, it is a butterfly, the caterpillar retains the memories. Like when it's a butterfly, it retains the caterpillar's memories. So I think like these liminal spaces are unbelievably joyous times where we are filled with possibility. And that's where I feel like I am now. And my son is in a different way.
That is so, now I know, I was trying to write it down. A
Finifugal.
A
The fact
finifugal.
that you can remember all that with brain fog is amazing.
And with the brain
Wow.
tumor and on a lot
is-
of pain medicine.
Wow. Wow.
That is
I mean,
truly amazing.
but I've never, that is something, because I have experienced that feeling a lot. I mean, when I have to move from a house, I feel like that house is a person or something, or that I'm so sorry, house, I have to leave you now.
I understand.
Yeah, now you have it. And I really struggled with the empty nest thing, but I am much better now. And I mean, it hit me. And Colleen and I had not started the podcast yet when we were going through that. And so when we started that, it was like the thing about having something to look forward to was a big thing when you experience that. But wow, I think you're going to be just fine.
Can you talk about the documentary New Worlds and the greatest beer run ever?
Well, it's funny, my son, because I have limited mobility, I would hire college students to come and roughhouse with him. My husband works, so so I would hire a Manny, and my son's male babysitter was a film student at NYU, and he's a fantastic young man, a young man I've mentored. And I was like, let's just take a few ideas. And we decided that we were only going to tell stories that were inspiring and positive. So our first film, which was called New Worlds, it's a documentary about Bill Murray when he performed with his classical quartet at the Acropolis. It's kind of like Yanni, but cool. And it closed the Cannes Film Festival this year, and it'll be aired on PBS. And then our next project, again, I was out with Andrew, and I introduced him to a friend of mine who's a journalist. And he asked an amazing question. He said to my friend who's a journalist, what is the best story that you never reported on? And she told us the story about how Chickie Donahue, who was a sandhog in New York City, he had served in the military, and he came back and 4 of his best friends were drafted into Vietnam. So he was like, there's so many, I don't feel like the boys are getting support the way that our fathers and uncles did in World War II. It was a different war. But he said, I'm going to go to Vietnam and bring our boys some Pabst Blue Ribbon. And so he got on a munition ship and got to Vietnam, met all 4 of his friends, and then got stuck during the Tet Offensive. So we made a short documentary that's on YouTube called The Greatest Beer Run Ever. And it will be a theatrical film. I just saw it last week in the rough cut. It stars Zac Efron, Russell Crowe, and Bill Murray. And it will be out in the fall. And Peter Farrelly from Dumb and Dumber and the Green Book wrote and directed. So what I love is that it's never too late to get smarter, to be better. And here I am in my 60th year, and I never thought that I would have, I mean, I worked very hard on Wise Up, but I never thought that working for years on these documentary project and beer run. I mean, they started in 2014, 2017. So I just always think if you don't give up, you can get anywhere you want.
And
That's
it's so,
great.
yeah, it's so important for our listeners to hear that, because as you said, you're turning 60 this month. So happy early birthday. And it's just you're never too old, and it's never too late. And taking care of yourself and doing things that you love at this stage of life is not selfish. Well, we spend so much time putting our children or our job or, the dog, anybody first. And it's okay to say, no, I want to start discovering who I am. I want to start finding those joys, whether they be small or large. And it's okay to do that. And you are a wonderful example of that.
So thank you.
Yes.
Well, so many skills are transferable, especially like women in our demographic. Like, I think we would be amazing spies because, I mean, we've been able to deal with so many unexpected experiences in life. We've got quick reflexes. We know how to care for others. We know how to be safe, and all skills are transferable. So what I learned when I was a kid as a volunteer at a nursing home, and about having clear elocution when working with people with Alzheimer's, and being able to move my body so they would be able to capture their attention. All those skills worked in getting me on MTV, because MTV was shortening America's attention span, and all these skills that I had actually worked. And then I just keep building on the skills. And so I did have a period where my son needed me a lot more, but all of those skills of showing up, of being prepared, are now coming back to me, and I'm able to share with others. And also, at this point in our life, we know more people, we can make more connections. And so there are many gifts as we hit into our amazing next chapter of life.
I'm going to say that your next documentary should be Menopausal Women Would Make Great Spies. That's just, I think that would be a good one. And
well, we noticed so much, and people don't notice us noticing,
Oh, that is so beautiful. We often say we become somewhat less visible.
yes.
And again, that is nature doing its trick. A friend of mine was telling me that that during times of where there's a threat of danger, a woman's vision, the peripheral vision, expands, because females are always like, okay, where are the kids? Where's everybody? Let me gather them. Where a male's gets tunnel vision. And so I think, like, gosh, this is why we make such good partners. We have distinctly different biological reactions to threats, to happiness, to ceremonies, and to be aware of that is the gift we give ourselves.
Well, I just want to take it back a little bit and say, what was it like being an MTV VJ in the 90s? Because I would love to know what it was like. We watched you. We were, I was working at a nursing home. I loved my job as a recreational therapist. I felt I had my purpose. This was what I was great at, and I was confident. And then I realized that the skill sets I had were transferable. So I made a
audio tape, a videotape, sent it into MTV unsolicited on a Friday. And by Tuesday, I had my screen test, and by Friday, I was on the air. So there was no time to I just realized I'm going to use all this nervous energy and try and turn this into gratitude. And I understand that to feel nervous is natural, and I'm not going to fight it. And I don't want it to be my enemy. I'm going to be friends with this anxiety and let it propel me forward. And it was so much fun. I truly felt like I snuck into a party and I was just waiting to get kicked out. And what's amazing is the friends that I made at MTV are still very, very good friends. We have reunions, and it was it was so great because I viewed my job as a VJ as a fan. I wasn't an expert. I figured what I could do was use my enthusiasm for music and pop culture, but I didn't know everything, and I allowed that. But one trick I did do was I figured, well, who did it best? And that was Frank Sinatra. So I would go to the Museum of Broadcasting and watch his old variety shows. And he was always dressed up. So this was during the height of grunge. So I would always make an effort to dress up, wear heels, even if you don't see my feet. And I just felt like putting on this uniform of something a little elegant kind of made me feel a little better. And until you kind of earn it.
Mhm. Yeah. And you mentioned that before, like when you're not feeling so great, just doing a little bit of effort might make you feel a little bit better. And just maybe in every aspect of your life, like if you're working, or that whole story is so amazing though, about how you got that job. I'm like, you just did it. You just went for it. And, I know so many times, and that's at any age, it could be when you're younger or even at this age, where you feel like, I don't know if I'm going to try this. It's not worth it. And then you're like, you never know what's going to happen if you just try
Exactly.
it. Mhm.
And, I think it is important that we constantly challenge ourselves, because it is never too late. And I hope that will be the message, because we have so much potential. We are the demographic that has the highest buying power. And I feel again that we're somewhat invisible. We buy more books than anyone. We buy all the cars. We spend all the money, and we seem to be overlooked. And that's why my philosophy is, no, I'm not going to be overlooked. I mean, I am going to try and be the best version of myself. And that's all I can do. That's all I can control. And again, make good, if by making good choices, I can make a good life.
Really looks like you have done that as well.
Thank you.
One story you told us off air, which I'm going to ask you to tell again, is your Menopause Awards.
Yes.
Can you talk about the fact that it's a great story? Can you tell the story?
So I have a son who is very athletic, and there's a lot of trophies in the closet. So I started taking off the plaque and then making my own. And then I've got into where I'm on eBay buying 5-foot-tall majorette trophies. And when a friend of mine goes through menopause, I write, "Congratulations, you're finished, period," and then send it off. And I will tell you, the fun that we have passing these trophies around, they get repurposed, and turning what can be, what often we fear a bit, to turn it into a celebration. I mean, always laugh when you can. And that's been a great thing, is something to not be ashamed of. Living with chronic pain and a chronic illness, I realized it is very embarrassing to be unwell. there's this idea that you're extracting all these resources of worry, that you're letting people down because you can no longer show up the way that you expected. And I just decided I will only feel shame if I've acted like a jackass. If I've been unkind, then I will feel shame. But I'm not going to feel shame for evolution and biology. So no, I'm going to make a trophy and I am going to honor it. And yeah, there's a few in the back room ready to go out.
What a great way to recycle those trophies.
Exactly.
especially from having children from the generation where everyone gets a trophy.
For everything. But that's such a great, I mean, we always talk about mindset, and that's such a great mindset to have, that it's a celebration. You know, I remember when I have two daughters, and when they would get their periods, it was a time for celebration. We'd go get a chocolate cake, and we'd, you know, it was, I wanted them to go into it knowing that it was a positive thing in their lives. So why not end it the same way? Maybe add a little cake in there. I don't know.
That's even better. That is such a good idea. I mean, it's astounding that we get 500 cycles in our life and we never know. It seems like it goes on forever.
Yes.
But you never know when the first one will descend, and nor will you know when the last one. And so there is still an element of surprise. So why not embrace that and be like, oh, well, like honestly, if men went through it, oh, there would be a celebration. There'd be a crown. There'd be a parade.
There'd be parties. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Gold watch. That's it. So I think that's going to be the next project, because there is so much to celebrate, and honestly, and not in a corny way, in a really cool way. So many of my, I love having intergenerational relationships and friendships. And I've learned so much from the older women in my life and from the younger men and women. And we should not be shamed for something we have no control over. Again, going right back to Marcus Aurelius in the Stoics, is we can't control what happens. So let's control how we respond. So why not respond with a chocolate cake and a trophy?
Bravo. I think that's a great idea. Bridget, in about 6 months, I expect a large trophy.
Chocolate cake?
And a chocolate cake at my door. That's all I'm saying.
Oh,
Bridget.
okay.
Just throwing it out in the universe, but
that's so great.
Thank you so much, Karen, for coming on the show. We want the listeners to go check out Wise Up, Irreverent Enlightenment from a Mother Who's Been Through It. It's a great book. Check out your other books as well. And good luck on all these new productions coming out. It sounds like the greatest beer run ever. I mean, that's so much fun. And the documentary on Bill Murray as well. You have a lot of fires going on, and that's a wonderful thing for our listeners to know, that it is never too late. You are never too old. And even when you have a challenge in your life, you can step up and find your joy, however you define that joy. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for sharing your bright light. It was truly an honor. And thank you again, truly from the bottom of my heart.